doing? Okay, we were muted. Hey, how is everyone doing today on this Money Conversations with Mars? Great to be back with you. I hope you had an amazing weekend. So, last week we discussed this article that I thought was pretty good, pretty insightful, and it was called Rules. What rules? Here are 7 financial commandments you can actually break. So remember how I was saying, it's very interesting how different trends, different advice comes about because it's typically stemming from something that's happened, which is why it's so important for us to know what has happened in the past, knowing our history a little bit in order to understand why would someone suggest this. When we think about our relatives, our elders really, who may have lived through the Great Depression and how they may have held on to their pennies really, really tightly. They may not have spent a lot. You may have people who were afraid to use banks, and from that, they may have passed on advice to where you may have someone right here in the 21st century who is nervous about using banks. That stemmed from somewhere. So that's just an example. I'm going to go on and share my screen. Now, I'm going to tell you all, I have been sneezing my head off today. And so I really hope I can get through this without sneezing the majority of the time that I am before you. So here is the article, and you see the title, you see the author, and the website. It's on Market Watch, which is a great website that I use every day. I like to go on and see what's going on, certain stocks that I'm watching for myself personally. I like to check out those. What are they saying? What's in the news? And I don't know. I'm interested in that. That may be too much for you. You may not be there. There are other sites that I'm going to talk about and show you. NerdWallet. So NerdWallet has been around a long time, and you can find some pretty practical advice on NerdWallet, and it's easy to read. So I feel like that was geared toward the everyday consumer or everyday individual with money. And you can go on and read about complex things, but it's presented in a way where the beginner in the money game can understand. And I always appreciate that because that is my goal, to make things plain. All right, so we talked about thou shalt not use credit cards. And so we talked about how, credit cards come in handy. You can use it to rent a vehicle, in case of emergency. It's good to have them. If you are disciplined and you want to use it, for points, or there may be some sort of reward system from using a credit card, you can do that. However, if you're not disciplined, if your cash flow is not what it should be or what you want it to be, think about the scenario. So let's just say, you charge use your credit card for something, and you're saying, I'm going to be able to pay this back at the end of the month, but something happens to where you're not able to pay it off. And now you're carrying a balance to the next month because the cash flow is not where it needs to be. So when you're in that situation, you need to be very careful, because you could have, those good intentions to pay it off at the end of the month. But if your cash flow is not there or your income is not predictable, that can get dangerous. We talked about thou shalt always be frugal. Again, the example I use is the Great Depression. So, you may have someone, and I've seen people who, they may have a need, they have the money, but they don't want to spend it. They have to hold on to their money. And it's good to save, but then in a way, that's a poverty mindset because you are fearful. That's fear, right? And we know that fear and faith cannot exist together. So money is a tool for us. And if we're saving up when we need something, we should absolutely get it. If your tire, goes flat, if you've been saving, and maybe your car's on its last leg and it's more expensive to repair it than it would be to purchase a new one, or you got to weigh your costs there. However, you have the money, you can afford the payment. So you making your car payment and getting the gas and the repairs isn't going to break you, because you have that cash flow coming in, your emergency fund is set, your debt is low. And so you may say, well, I don't want to take on a car payment. However, it really isn't going to hurt me because I have all these things in place. Get the car. You know what I mean? So we don't want to walk in fear. And sometimes when I listen to people tell me how frugal they are, I hear fear. It sounds good, but they're afraid. And it's different between I don't have it, so let me wait, opposed to I have it, but I got to hold on to my money. Or, we know cheap people. Let's not sugarcoat it. I know some cheap people. Now, we all pick and choose what we want to spend our money on. So some people may say, I prefer not to drop $100 and some odd dollars on dinner, but I will take this money and I'm into electronics, or, something like that, opposed to cheap. I don't want to tip. Oh my gosh. Like I do not go out with people who do not tip. That I cannot get with that. That makes me cringe, right? So you have some people who won't tip. You've gone to dinner with those people, they find every little single thing wrong. It's like, why would you even come out if you're going to come out with that type of attitude? Everything is wrong. And then they don't tip, which to me, if you're walking around telling everybody how blessed you are, then you should be a giving person, right? Blessed to be a blessing. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox. But some people are just cheap. Again, if you have the money, you have the cash flow, certain things aren't going to bother you because you have the cash flow, you have things in place. You're not concerned about where your income is coming from. You don't have to be cheap, but it is good to use wisdom on when to spend, how much to spend, so forth and so on. We talked about thou shalt send your kids to the best college money can buy. And we talked about, for some of us like myself who are parents, how we want to give our kids the best of the best. And it's nothing wrong with that, right? However, we also have to keep in mind who our kid is. We know our children, right? If we're parenting, we know our kids. And so we know if they have the potential to survive in this environment. But if we have the child who has not yet matured, and this is just my opinion, if we have the child who has not yet matured, we may not want to send them out of state hoping and a wishing that it's all going to work out, right? Especially if we've been there and we remember what it was like to be 18. Sometimes, we may have a very mature 18-year-old. I've met some very mature 18-year-olds, just impressive, but then there's some who they're not quite ready to go so far. And so we may want to start them out in state where it's a little cheaper. Especially if we have a C student, we may want to start them off in community school, pay as you go. Let's see if we can get those skills up and then transfer into, another school. In Georgia, there are community schools that are a part of a system to where you attend and you can transfer, like to Georgia State or to Georgia Tech. They have all sorts of programs today. So you don't have to empty out your 401k. Empty out your IRA to send your kid to college. Here's another way to look at this also. Unless whatever one is going to study is extremely specialized and only this school has this. Education is an education is an education. Again, my opinion. Why do I say that? Because you get out of it what you put in. So you know how some people say, I want to go to a HBCU. Some people want to go to a PWC, private white college. Some people want to go to a state school. People have 1,000 reasons for their decision, which is theirs to make. However, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you go. If you're not engaged, if you're not studying, if you don't stay after and talk to the professor, if you don't make the appointment during the office hours, you join no organizations on campus, you aren't going to get that much out of it anyway, right? So a degree is a degree is a degree. And in the 21st century, a degree is not needed to be successful, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're teaching your child about entrepreneurship. That's an education in and of itself, one that is looked over, one that should be taught in schools, because it is those who start the businesses who stimulate the economy by being able to hire people and pay them so they can go out and buy stuff and keep this economy going. So it's just something to think about. I know for myself, having the degrees and remembering what it was like to be 18. And I remember the conversations I had with people in my community, what school should I go to? Why? I mean, I was having conversations with all of the people in my community, church and organizations I was member, my teachers, and everyone had a reason. Everyone had their point of view. However, I don't think I now would make my kids go to college. Like, I would not present that as their only choice. My wisdom has shown me that we are going to pay attention to them, and we're going to invest in the areas where they are good. And God willing, we will, continue to live this long life healthy, of sound mind, so that we can make good decisions on where to put our money, because this one's good at this one's good at that. So then we need to put money over here, put money over there. And then by the time it's all said and done, I feel like God would have shown us what to do. And he's growing them and maturing them, and they're going to have some idea, right? So we're like working together. I don't know if I said this last week, but Tabitha Brown made a comment. She said, Tabitha Brown made a comment where she said that it was not her job to decide who her kids were going to be. It was her job to help guide them to where they were or where they're supposed to go, because these are God's children. She's there as a guide to keep them safe, to help them make good decisions. But ultimately, if God created them, he already knows who he wants them to be. So I really took that to heart, and I was like, wow, that is true. So when we're like, oh, said college, this is the best college in the United States, it's on the top 20, and it costs this, and if it costs this much, then I know it's got to be a great education. They're going to be absolutely successful. Do we know that? We want to believe God that they're going to be successful, but success will be how they define it, not how we define it, right? And so we cannot dictate that. So again, my opinion, but I don't want to dictate that, and I don't want to fall into that group who says, paying for this, going here is the only way it's going to work out, because I don't believe that to be true. It is just, we live in a different world, and you can get a whole education off of YouTube and pay whatever it is a month that they charge for YouTube and get a whole education right off of YouTube and go on and do great things. So we're not going to spend our entire retirement on college. This one was fun. Retirement is the holy grail. So if you look here, I don't know if you can see this too well. Let me see if I can make it bigger. So when they created Social Security in the 30s, that was a way to make retirement popular, to make that a goal. And so nowadays we have people who are starting their second life. They leave the workforce and they go on to do something else. In my day job, or self-employment, it's really self-employment. So I'm a 1099. And so I have met so many retirees. So check this out. I knew a gentleman who we do the same thing. He started off as a police officer. He retired. I think he became a police officer like right out of high school or something like that. He retired from that. Then he joined, I think he worked for Delta, like in their security department, having had all that law enforcement background. He retired from Delta. I forgot to mention he was in the military. And you can do military and have a civilian job if you're like National Guard or reserves. So that he retired from there as well. And because he was just an active person, he wasn't done. He does this. Can you count how many checks? And he has grandkids and he's just living it up. He's enjoying life, collecting checks from all the different areas that he retired from. And, he calls himself semi-retired today, but he's not thinking about sitting down. He's a 1099, so he can make his own hours. So he's self-employed like me. And so he travels and, it's funny, to see him on Facebook. He bakes pie for his adult kids and spends time with the grandkids, and being a 1099, he pretty much works when he wants. So like, who do you know in today's world who's looking to retire to literally just sit down? I'm looking at people on my timeline and in my life who they join a nonprofit, they're busy with the nonprofit, they are starting businesses, they are consultants, having built up years of expertise. They want to teach, or companies bring them in to teach here and there, and then they go sit down. I met a gentleman who's in, where is he? I think he's in Michigan. Met him via Zoom as a business colleague in my financial business. And in speaking with him, he consults 6 months out of the year. And I believe these consulting gigs he takes just to come in, share his knowledge. He may work 6 months out of the year, and not even consecutively. He makes enough money for the year and then some. How about that? He is at the age of retirement, and that's why he consults and then goes back home and does whatever he wants to do. That is the life. Can you imagine? That's amazing, right? So that is why, let me throw this in here. That's why it's so important to be investing our money while we're up, active, able-bodied. When we make money, we always want to invest our money because we don't know what's coming on down the line. And the money that we're investing now, God may give us another idea down the line. He may want us to start a nonprofit. He may want us to give money to a certain organization. You never know. So it's like, what do they say? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I read something that said something like, you don't miss your time. Your time will come. It'll either expose that you weren't ready or present that you were. It was something along the lines of that, right? So we want to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do so we can be ready when the time comes. We're able to do the things, because again, we don't know what's coming down the pike. We just don't. And God is always talking to us, so we just want to make sure. And of course, we serve a God. He is gracious, loving. So when he wants us to do something, he's gonna send us the resources. However, wouldn't it be amazing to just have certain things in place, so when he gives the word, we can just take off, opposed to kind of pausing and saying, all right, now where am I going to get this? And I may have to wait a little longer because I have to go through this in order to get this. He's still with me, but let's just do what we're supposed to do so everything can work out, right? All right, so number 6, thou shalt achieve financial success by owning a home. So guess what? They are saying that home ownership isn't necessarily effective in closing the racial wealth gap. What do you think about that? When I think about generational wealth, a home, here's an example. I have lots of stories, folks, so bear with me, but it's just a good way to illustrate my point. I have met several people over my career, day job, whose grandparents left a home and grandchild lives in the home with spouse, has children, lives in a paid for home, and they're working every day and putting money in the bank. That makes me feel so warm inside. Okay? Home ownership when you have the money, let me get face to face. Home ownership when you have the money is a beautiful thing, right? Home ownership when you don't have the money, when you don't have an emergency fund, when you're not investing, when you're not putting things aside, can be a nightmare. It can either be a dream or it can be a nightmare. Now, do things happen? Yes, things happen. You know, people get sick, people get laid off, people get furloughed, fired. Things happen in life. I mean, it isn't a case of if, when it happens, right? We just believe God for, healing and making a way. The faith is still there. However, we do know as Christians, we signed up for it. You know what I mean? In this life, you will have trouble, but take heart, have overcome the world. So we already know what it is, right? When we have, again, invested our money, we've saved our money, we've gone in with the information. Now, can we know everything? Can we be 100% prepared? I don't think you can be 100% prepared for anything, right? However, we can do our best. So if you're getting ready to purchase a home, that home can be a dream. It can become a symbol of wealth if we're able to take care of it, make the repairs, if we're able to make improvements, small things like pressure washing our home. In some instances, purchasing a home is the biggest amount of money that some of us will ever spend is on that home. So to not be able to keep the house up, keep the yard up, that's your property value, and then we live in a community. Unless you purchase a home way out in the woods somewhere, when you live in a community close together, you got to think about it, right? Am I my neighbor's keeper? If neighbor decides to sell their home and they live next door to the person who doesn't pressure wash their house, they got cars up on cinder blocks in the front yard and 1,000 toys in the front yard and just a disaster, right? Because there may not be any money or whatever the case. Your dream home can become a nightmare for you or a nightmare for someone else, right? And so we are people who look out for other people. We think about other people. So it's more than, oh, I have a home and generational wealth and blah, 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 blah. It's not only do I want to purchase my home, I want to be able to keep and maintain my home. So it's something like this. My mom would tell me this all the time when I was young, because, you turn 16 and what do you want to do? You want a car and you want them to get you a car, right? And she said, if you can't afford the gas for the car, you can't afford the car. What was she saying? You're going to buy a car and just let it sit? Because you got to put gas in it to make it go. So it isn't just exciting to buy a car. Like, that can't be the goal. Maintaining the car. Same thing with the home. The goal just can't be to purchase it. The goal has to be to maintain it, increase the value by making upgrades when it's time. So it's like we just have to have a different type of thinking in order for that home to not just be a symbol, but to work in our favor. Thou shalt buy and sell individual stocks because that is what savvy investors do. Now, let me tell you about buying and selling stocks. Let me share this really quick, you all. I forgot to share so you can see it, because if you can go back and look at this article and read it for yourself, that would be great. So here it is. Thou shalt buy and sell individual stocks because that is what savvy investors do. So let's talk about that for a second. So remember, over the pandemic, you probably heard a lot about trading stocks and different companies coming up. asking people to come in and learn how to trade stocks, which I think it's a wonderful education to know, because I mean, if you're one who keeps up with your investments and you read the prospectus that they send out, and when it's time to vote, you get the email and you go on to see and keep up, that's awesome. So you may want to learn what's going on and how it works. I mean, it's awesome if you're into it. But you got to be careful about following popular advice. Make sure you're getting the knowledge and the wisdom for yourself, because out here in the world today, microwave generation, we've heard this already. So many people are looking for this get rich quick, don't have to do any work, don't make any mistakes, no challenges come up. And that is not how it works. Again, I know people who have taught themselves how to buy and sell stocks. These people did not have jobs. One of my supervisors, she on maternity leave, she's married, she has a husband who paid the bills, she had some money saved up. She taught herself how to buy and sell stocks. I was so excited. I thought it was so cool. She looked like me, a couple years older than me. And to hear this woman talking about, she made $10,000, and I'm like, what? But I didn't have the patience to go through it. So I wasn't about to sit and gamble my money away, because that's what it is when you don't have the knowledge, right? Knowledge minimizes risk. But I thought it was cool that she was patient enough with herself to learn, and she was willing to lose. See, that's the other thing. When we're getting these advice from people, we need the whole story. Have a friend who was learning how to, trade, told me up front, I've lost a lot of money learning this. I'm not going to lie, I've lost a lot of money. So if you're not willing to lose to gain, don't play the game. This is your money, your hard-earned money. Me personally, do I have single stocks? I do. I have bought some stocks, over 10 years ago and held on to them. And over the pandemic, I was pleasantly surprised at the gains because I forgot about it, right? So it's not like I'm buying and selling and trading every day. That's gambling, because the knowledge is not there. I prefer investing long-term, building of wealth. Put it away, have my broker tell me where to put it, leave it, and go on about my business. I'm going to put my stash code. If you all have heard of stash, I use stash to purchase mutual funds. And again, I'm not making any recommendations because I'm currently studying for my securities licenses. And once I get them, I will be back with some recommendations for you all. However, I'm saying me personally, I followed the advice of my broker and did the mutual funds to build long-term wealth. So I'm going to end right there. Again, it's always a pleasure hanging with you. I want to remind you that Miss Regina is coming up on Wednesday, Uniquely Gorgeous. So if you need to turn on your notifications so you can be notified of when she goes live on Wednesday. And then don't forget Empowered Mornings, Monday through Friday, 7:00 a.m. with the Fab Five. And so again, I will see you next Monday with more Money Conversations with Mars. If you had any questions about what we discussed, want to reach out to me, please feel free. For the ladies who responded to last week before last live, I answered your questions about whole life insurance in the beginning of last week. You can follow me on Instagram, _ Money Things from Mars. You see me in the group to follow me on Facebook. What else? Oh, my website, www.coachmoneymars.com. And I will see you next Monday, because you should prosper. I'm trying to make a ways now. Money, 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 money.